What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Meko, once again joined by my guy Morgan here. And Morgan, we're going to do something a little unique over here on the channel today. We're actually going to take a look at the Lions defense because coming out of this Chargers game, like we kind of talked about in our recap, our film breakdown yesterday, it was very offensive heavy. And obviously, coming out of that game, whenever you give up 38 points to an opposing team, there's going to be a lot of questions about the defense, about the defensive coordinators, about the scheme. There's a lot of things to kind of dive into. So what I think we decided to do was just take a look at a couple plays from this game and try to come to a conclusion of like, listen, is there an actual problem with this defense? Or is it just, a few things going wrong for the Lions in certain situations and a few things going right for the Chargers and in other situations?
Yeah, and I think that's something we talked about it before we got on here, but we're going to get into it as we go through some of these plays from the Chargers game. But it's the NFL, man. The margins are razor thin, and some of these quarterbacks, like the Justin Herberts of the world, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar, Jalen Hurts. You're going to have. It's just like a basketball player. Like they're going to get theirs, but
Mm-hmm.
the role of the defense is you have to make it at least tough on them, right? Like you're not going to shut them all the way down in all likelihood, just because that's the kind of player they are. That's the reason those quarterbacks in that tier that can do everything are so coveted and so highly paid in this league.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm excited to get into this just to maybe calm some people down a little bit. That the world is not on fire. I like to remind people the Lions are still ninth overall in defensive DVOA. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think like what you were just saying, right? Like it's going to sound like an excuse. I know it. And I know people are going to get in the comment section and be like, but it happens every time they play against good quarterbacks. That's why they're considered good quarterbacks though. Like the top of like the best, the top 10 quarterbacks, like they are more prone to be able to just have performances like this. And it's not necessarily about shutting them down, but it is about making life difficult for them. And I think in this game specifically that we're going to dive into in a minute, there were a number of things that the Lions did wrong that allowed Justin Herbert more freedom, and it made his job easier to find success, or for the Chargers offense as a whole to find success. So it's not just about, again, why can't the Lions shut people down? Because I think that's really difficult to do. I think, speaking of Lamar Jackson that you brought up, like their game against the Browns, right? The Browns won that game for sure, but they didn't necessarily quite shut down Lamar Jackson. Like Lamar just had some bad turnovers and a couple of plays here and there where they were able to keep him in check. But I still think he threw for over 300 yards. He still threw for a couple touchdowns. Like, so would you say that you shut him down or that you basically forced him into some uncomfortable situations? And I think that's where this Lions defense has to get to, is that they have to get to a point where they're forcing teams into more uncomfortable situations so that they have a wider margin of victory in some of these tough contests.
Yeah, and we're not absolving the defensive performance as a whole the other day. Like the five straight drives ending with touchdowns, like that's not okay. And we're not saying it is. That's but I also don't think that's going to happen every week, right?
Yeah.
Because this has been a solid unit, that's played a lot of good football, some bad football, some bad stretches of football for sure, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to happen. Like we just said, it's the NFL. The margins are tight. Everyone has players. That's the reason the NFL is king, right? The any given Sunday term is there for a reason. There's a lot of parity in this league. Teams beat other teams all the time. So the Lions were lucky to escape with a win. The offense it was cool to see the offense win a shootout. Like Dan Campbell said, the Lions really hadn't done that yet through his tenure.
Yeah.
They come out on top of a shootout, I mean. So yeah, we'll get into it, but I just want people to realize that when you're facing quarterbacks like Herbert, it's never going to be like a matter of like, oh, they allowed less than 150 passing yards and no touchdowns. Like this ain't the 2000 Ravens, okay?
Yeah. Absolutely. So without further ado, let's jump into the first play. And this is a play that I pulled, Morgan, when going through the tape. And it's not necessarily like, again, something wrong with the schematics or the technique or anything like that. This is something that I would put in the bucket of, a deficiency in discipline, right? Because I think that also goes hand in hand or very much in hand with with a good defensive performance. yes, you need guys to have great technique. You need guys to know their assignments. You need guys to communicate. But even when all of those things go well, you still need your players to be able to, operate within the rules and understand, how they can finish plays and how they shouldn't finish plays. And in this particular play, this was 3rd and 12. On the Chargers, they have a great opportunity here to get off the field. And Julian Okwara does, I would say, about 99% of things right on this play to get the Lions off the field. It's that 1%, though, that takes this from being, 4th and 12 to a retry on 3rd and 12 because there was offsetting penalties.
Yeah, and there were several occasions of that against the Chargers, right? Like the Lions had opportunities to get off the field and they just didn't. And if they had gotten off the field, say, 3 times on Sunday against the Chargers, then the conversation we're having is a lot different today. People aren't as not everything is on fire in people's minds. So yeah, this is a good rush by Julian. The Chargers have a tight end in line, standing up basically next to the left tackle, Rashawn Slater, and Julian does a good job beating the tight end cleanly. Slater's feet kind of get caught up, and Julian gets into him and disposes of him really easily too. And it's a good rush, gets to Herbert, but yeah, just finishes a little bit of hot, just finishes, excuse me, a little high, and they're always going to call that
Yeah.
forcible contact to the head or neck, just because they're in the business of protecting these quarterback guys. It's just these quarterbacks, excuse me. So yeah, they're always going to call that. It was a good call, and fortunately for the Lions, offsetting at least.
This is another situation where, again, you guys did everything right in terms of getting to the quarterback. You lacked finish. Like that's the thing that I would highlight here is that the defense does everything it needs to do, and they get 3 opportunities in my mind to get this quarterback down, and they still aren't able to do it. And that to me is just, again, it highlights the inability to finish plays in these situations.
Yeah, it seems like we're always reading about how like Hutch, I believe, is second or third in the NFL in pressures. So
Yeah.
and it's plays like these, and I realize Herbert is a different kind of athlete, being 6'5", 6'6", and as athletic and as twitchy as he is. But yeah, they run a game here where they get pretty good execution out of it and get good results. And Derek Barnes gets a hand on him, and yeah, nobody's able to bring him down.
Yeah. And so part of this is, like you're saying, this part of this is absolutely Justin Herbert being a different caliber of athlete. But then it's hard to like really, it's hard to fault the defense as a whole when this play technically works, right?
Yeah, and it's just one of those plays like 25 out of the 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. This is a sack. Um, you know,
Yeah.
Jared, this is probably a sack 8 times out of 10. Goff, there's some quarterbacks it's a clean 10 out of 10. That's a sack. So it
Yeah.
just it just speaks to again the point we made about these quarterbacks making plays because like we talked about, had the Lions just gotten off the field a handful of times, the final score to this game probably looks a whole lot different. The winning margin by the Lions looks a whole lot different for sure. Um, so yeah, it's just I'm
And
sure they've been talking.
I should clarify, my bad to interrupt you. This was 3rd and 5 too, guys. Like this wasn't like, it's not like this
Yeah,
was like 2nd and 5. Like, oh well, who knows what happens in the next play? Like, no, this was 3rd and 5. You're probably getting a sack. You're probably getting the football back.
yeah, and it was just a theme of the day, right? Like the Chargers just continually keeping the Lions on the field, which compounds problems too, right? Like the Chargers went 7 for 14 on third downs, and then they went 3 for 3 on fourth down. So I mean, 10 for 17. The Lions had 10 opportunities, or 17 opportunities, excuse me,
Yeah.
uh, to get off the field, and yeah, it just didn't. Not good enough, especially when you're facing a quarterback like Herbert.
Yeah. So I got one more play for you, Morgan, where again, I think the defensive line could have done a little bit of a better job. And then after that, we're going to kind of transition and look at the secondary a bit and talk about some of the deficiencies that may have occurred there and why those things happened. But I'm not trying to pick on Aiden Hutchinson by any means, right? But I do think there are things when it comes down to technique. And I do think there are things about, again, just understanding down and distance or understanding what his responsibility is in certain situations that he can get better at so that plays like this don't happen. And part of it is still Justin Herbert being special. But again, like we said, maybe not necessarily stopping that person, but being able to contain them and making their job a little bit more difficult. Um, and that's not quite what happens on this play that we're about to look at here.
No, and to be clear here, like we both like Hutch, guys. Like I really think Hutchinson's a great player. I think he's a great kid. Seems to really like be loved by his teammates. But the reason we're focusing on him and the reason he pops up a lot when we're doing these film reviews is because he's one of the Lions' best defenders, definitely their best defensive lineman. They expect a lot out of him. So yeah, this is a good rush. This is, we just talked about him relying on his bull rush a lot, but it's because like this, he can make hay out of it. So they have the inline tight end there. He actually doesn't chip Hutch or anything. He's just there to make Hutch's path a little bit wider to Herbert. But yeah, he gets a really good bull rush, gets his hands into Pipkins. My only critique, and I know we talked about it before, was he gets a little bit too sharp of an angle and
Yeah.
maybe misjudges how athletic Herbert is because he has him again. Like I said, this is 25 out of 32 quarterbacks, give or take. This is a sack, but Herbert gives him a little stiff arm, runs away from him, and is able to. Is this a third down too? I can't remember.
Yeah, this was.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, guys, we're just showing y'all all the third downs. I'm sorry, but yep, stiff arm gets away from him, throws a little dart, first down, and this is taxing on a defense's psyche too. This is
Yeah.
like, man, we can't get off the field against this guy, and
And in a situation where you're like, man, I was just there, right? Like I was so close to being able to get this. And so I think what you said is true. I think in piggybacking off of like how you said, like you think he got a little too sharp in there. What I was kind of saying when we talked about this before we started recording, I think he just got a little too deep in his bull rush, right? Where like at some point in time, you have to dispose of this player because Justin Herbert is that type of athlete where he can just sidestep this and he's going to basically like he could have ran for this, first down, or again, he just extends the play and you make that easier. And I know that's crazy to say that like what throwing on the run is easy, but for a quarterback like this, it is. Like this is just as much a layup as him just sitting in the back, sitting in the pocket, being able to deliver the football.
yeah, and this is where I'd like to see Hutch develop, like, because you have the tackle already on skates a little bit, right? Like you have
Hmm.
Pipkins' weight off, his chest is up. You won that battle. You've got the leverage. I would love Hutch to get that hump move in his repertoire. If you don't know what that is, guys, go to YouTube. Hump.
I was gonna
Just
say, be careful how you search this, guys.
be careful what you search. This first. Search Reggie White hump move, because Reggie White was like one of my favorite players back in the day, and he executed this thing to perfection, man. But yeah, I would love Hutch to learn that right here because it'd be perfect.
Yeah,
Because yeah, you're right, Miko. He could have, and I'm sure Pipkins was latched onto him at least, trying to not let him get to Herbert. So I'm sure that was going on to an extent. But yeah, it's a good rush, and Hutch had several of these where.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say he had several good rushes. It just didn't end in a bucket.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Morgan. So that's a lot of the stuff that, like I said, that I kind of really tried to focus a lot on the defensive line, just some deficiencies that I saw there, whether, like I said, whether it was discipline, whether it was some technique things. But you pulled a lot of great clips of just, again, a couple things that went wrong in the secondary, especially when it came down to either covering Keenan Allen or just making the job difficult for Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and they did a good job. Kellen Moore wasn't doing anything exotic. The Chargers' offensive coordinator, he was just leveraging coverages to his advantage. So he knew he wanted to get Keenan Allen against certain Lions defenders, and he did a good job of doing that. So over here, you'll have him circled in the slot. He's going to come in motion down to the bottom of your screen, and pause it right here, Miko. So you're going to have Brian Branch look like he's going to be in line to cover Keenan Allen, but they're going to have a quick bit of communication right before the ball snapped. And so Brian Branch is going to have, I believe that's Gerald Everett maybe in
Yeah.
coverage. And Kirby's going to have Keenan Allen. And I really love Kirby. Kirby's one of my favorite young Lions right now. But Yeah, he just gets caught really flat-footed here. You'll see him at the top of the break. So yeah, Brian Branch is going to travel with Gerald Everett, and then Kirby has Keenan Allen. Um, and Kirby's, in good position, but he just kind of gets caught flat-footed, and Allen runs right by him, and Herbert's able to lay that throw right on in there.
So like this, I love your analysis of that because it does. It kind of looks like Kirby, for some reason or other, it's like he's expecting him to run maybe a shorter route, and Keenan Allen, being the savvy route runner that he is, kind of just plays him a little bit, right? Like he kind of
Yeah.
gives him that little bit of a stutter step, and then basically uses that as a like, yo, I can use the stutter and go on you.
Yeah, he almost hit him with a little skip almost, and then he got up and said something to Kirby too. I'm sure that wasn't too friendly, but yeah, Keenan Allen's he's not new to this. He's been doing this a long time, and yeah, it's just they did this several times. Like I said earlier, they were motioning him to just get a more favorable matchup a lot of the times, whether it's against Kirby, Brian Branch, Tracy Walker, and they're all good players, mind you, but Keenan Allen's a vet. He's got a really good quarterback throwing it to him, and he's going to make plays like this, especially if you aren't playing with the proper technique. Like, love Kirby. I want to reiterate that. I think he's a great
Mm-hmm.
player, and I think he's still going to get a lot better. But this wasn't one of his best days, and I do think he's like some of them in the secondary are trying to overcompensate and make too many plays,
Yeah,
and getting a little bit outside of the structure of the defense, and that's another way, to your point, Miko, that you're making life easier for Herbert because then there's layups for chunks of yardage, right?
yeah. And I think to that point, like again, not trying to harp on Kirby, but I think this is something that again, if you watch enough tape, if you go back and watch enough snaps of Kirby, especially this year specifically, this happens quite a bit, right? Where he does kind of just get a little flat footed. It's either like you feel like he's trying to overanalyze a route concept, or maybe he just doesn't have his eyes in the right spot, and things like this kind of happen where plays are made in front of him or around him, and he's not quite able to break on them. And like we kind of talked about in our video yesterday, he has the athleticism to get to a lot of plays if he would just kind of just understand his responsibilities. It seems like, and just kind of be where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely, Miko. And Kirby is one of those, like, he knows where to be. I can't say that with like certainty because I'm not in the man's head, but like he's back there a lot of the time getting people lined up. This
Mm-hmm.
is his second year under Aaron Glenn, so like he knows the defense. But I think it's a part of it's like, well, I'm supposed to be here, but if I think the play is going here, I might be able to make a play.
Yeah.
Especially because he was a magnet for turnovers last year with the interceptions, the fumble recoveries, you name it. So, and he did get one. That pick he had against the Chargers was nice. I know we hit that, I believe, in our video, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So
Yesterday. Yeah.
that was an amazing play. But for every play like that, I'd rather just stay within the structure of the defense. Don't make things easier for a guy like Herbert. And this next play, he actually makes a good play. It's just a
I was gonna
shrug
say,
your
like, as much as
shoulders.
we're saying, like, hey, he's flat footed in that situation, he plays this one perfectly. And this is just like, I'm better than you. This is Michael Jordan, post you up, fade away in the post, and it's just like I had my hand up and he still made the shot. Like,
Yeah, this is an S tier throw, man. And so you'll see when the ball snapped, Kirby's the deep safety. He gets into his drop, and he's watching Herbert. So watch Kirby's eyes here. And pretty quickly, he realizes that Herbert wants to throw it to Guyton, running basically, a post from the slot. Not even a post, really, just a straight up the seam. So yeah, just a really, really good throw. And a lot of guys don't even attempt this throw because I'm sure Herbert does see Kirby going there. He's just like, I can fit it. And he
yeah,
does.
no, absolutely. And I think like that's something
Nasty.
that, again, like I don't think the defense does anything wrong here. Like everything is kind of covered the way it is, and like if you really start over analyzing this, you can start getting into a situation where you're like, well, maybe this person should have done this. But I think the way the play was called defensively, everyone is where they're supposed to be, when this ball is initially snapped.
Yep. And Kirby covers a lot of ground, right? Like Herbert doesn't waste a lot of time getting it to Guyton. Like it's not like he's looking off anybody. Like he's looking over there. Gives a little bit of a pump fake with the hips to whoever's down here at the bottom of the screen. I believe that's Quentin Johnston.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, he just lets it rip, man. And if Kirby had broken like a half second earlier, maybe he gets a hand on it, maybe he picks it. But that's a that's a rarefied air window that Herbert fit that ball into. Where only again, I hate to sound like a broken record, guys, but only a couple cats in the league attempt that throw
Yeah.
or make it.
No,
So
100%. I think like again, there's I don't think there's anything that you can kind of critique. Like that's one of those things where again, if Aaron Glenn is breaking down this play with his defense, he's like, "Yo, Kirby, great job breaking on the play." I don't think the defensive line could have done anything in that situation, right? Because like you said, Herbert gets the ball out so quickly. So you're kind of left with a shoulder shrug where it's like, "Yo, that's just
dang.
a dart. That's a missile. That's a spot on play." And like you said, only the best of the best in terms of quarterback play make those types of plays in the NFL. And unfortunately, the Lions got burned on a couple of those.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize like Herbert has a howitzer. That thing can, he's got some zip on on those throws if he wants to put some extra cheddar on there. So yeah, last play we're gonna have similar to what we've been going through here. They're gonna send Keenan Allen in motion towards the top of your screen. You're gonna have Jerry Jacobs circled at the top there, and Jerry gives him a lot of cushion. And we're not really sure what coverage the Lions are in here. It's hard to infer, but you'll see the Chargers are going to run a little bit of a concept here. So Keenan Allen's going to run a post. Uh, Inside of him, that receiver is going to run basically an in that's going to pull Tracy Walker down from his position and make him commit to the in. I think it's that tight end right there that's in line that's going to run the in.
Yeah.
Just makes it really easy without any safety help for Herbert to just throw this in here. So, like we talked about, wasn't bad coverage by Jerry. He's in phase here, aside from not getting any hands on Keenan Allen and not trying to reroute him, because you're
Well, I
just
was gonna
at the
say he also
mercy
gives
of
him
him.
yeah, he also gives him inside leverage right on the
Yeah,
release. So it's like
free release.
yeah, so it's again he doesn't have to redirect himself at all. It's just like well I'm open, right? This is an easy window, and so you're asking a lot of Jerry to be able to get a PBU in this situation. And again, like you said, I am not sure what this coverage is. This looks really confusing to me. And
Yeah,
because it's confusing to me, again, this could just because I'm a novice and that's perfectly fine. But I also remember Dan Campbell saying, when talking about this game specifically, that, hey, when it comes to the back end, we need to get our communication, cleaned up better so that everyone is on the same page as far as what we're supposed to be doing. And so because again, I'm guessing, but because I'm not sure what the hell is supposed to be happening here, I feel like there might have been some miscommunication somewhere about where certain help is supposed to be because it's really odd to me that you would just put Jerry Jacobs out there with no safety help um in this type of situation.
no, and I agree, Miko. And if you look at the rest of the defenders, if you go back and pause it at any moment in time on your own, guys that are watching, you'll see like Brian Branch and Cam Sutton and Jack Campbell and others very much look like they're in zone. They're passing things off. They're communicating. But then, yeah, Tracy really cuts on that in really hard. And it just, like you said, makes it really easy because once Herbert sees that Tracy commits to that in, he knows he has a good shot. And the worst that's probably going to happen is it's incomplete because Keenan Allen's not going to allow the DB to come down with that ball. So, yeah, like we talked about from the top, a lot of the times the Lions defense, there were sometimes they made it tough, but a lot of the times they
Mm-hmm.
made it easy by some of these, whatever we want to call it, a miscommunication, a schematic lapse, or however we want to phrase it. But yeah, I would love to know the true why on this play because there's a couple things going on and it leads to an easy throw and catch for Herbert.
So I think they have a few more matchups going into the next few weeks where they have an opportunity to get this defense right, to be able to figure out the pass rush, to be able to clean up the communication, and to limit the mental errors so that again it gives them more wiggle room to be able to win by larger margins.
Yeah, and just you made the best point I think of this video, Mika. Just don't make things easy. Like it's like a really elite basketball like player, scorer, however you want to phrase it. You're not going to shut down the Luka Doncic's and the Jason Tatum's and the LeBron James and the Steph Curry's of the world. You can hopefully slow them down. Same thing. You're not going to completely bottle up the Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jacksons, the Justin Herberts of the world. So you're gonna have to just slow them down. And the way to do that is to be sound. Don't make things easy and make them earn it. Right. Like
Yeah.
that's the least you can do because teams will eventually turn it over. You'll get lucky. You'll get off the field here and there. Because we showed like four of those plays, I believe, where the Lions
Yeah.
probably should have gotten off the field.
Yeah. They had
And
opportunities
yeah,
to get off the field where these are third down situations. And there
yeah,
were a number of situations, like I said, like, again, we talked about there are people are going to complain about the pass rush. You can go back and watch the game. There were absolutely instances where the pass rush got there and they absolutely made life difficult for Justin Herbert. It becomes an issue or becomes a matter of that being consistently there on third down. And again, not allowing penalties and things like that to extend drives.
yeah, because it adds up, guys. Football's we think of it as this big, huge, and it is. It's a big, huge game played with 22 players on the field, and everything has to be working together. But it's the little things, right? Like it's the little things that add up to big things, and that's why the game is so fun and so exciting for so many people. So yeah, I'm exciting to see it. They're 7-2 at the end of the day. We're sitting here like complaining, and it shows that how far this team has come in such a short amount of time. But man, you know,
We're that's an actually really interesting point. We're complaining about a team that's 7-2, and we're basically saying, well, this defense doesn't look like it's good enough to win the Super Bowl. And it's like,
how
but this
far have we
might be
come?
good enough to win a playoff game.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. How far have we come, huh?
How bougie have we become as fans? Where it's like,
Yeah,
Super Bowl.
I know. Soon we're gonna be those fans that everyone hates. I hope, where they're like, "Oh, Lions fans have it." So that's what I want.
Hey, listen, we deserve it. Like
Yes,
when
we
when we
do.
reach that peak, we deserve to be those fans for as long as we were terrible.
A couple decades at least. That's it.
Absolutely.
I'd say about three.
But guys, that's going to do it for this video. We appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out. Morgan, appreciate you taking the time to jump on here and break down all this film with me. Like always, if you guys are looking for more content, always be sure to check out prideofdetroit.com where you can catch up on all the latest news, rumors, or whatever the case may be that may be coming out. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button on this channel. Be sure to hit the notification bell. That way you can be notified of anytime we go live, anytime we upload a new video, or anything like that over here on the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. But with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch. Catch you guys in the next one.